Chapter 1. Have you ever read The Adventures of Pinocchio? What a famous fellow he was. He could talk and walk and live as you do, children, and still he was only a marionette. How sad the little fellow felt when he saw his father disappear in his little boat over the sea. Do you remember how Pinocchio then tried to swim across the ocean? How he did his best to save his poor old father. How he jumped into the water. How he swam and swam over those great high waves. And how at last he became so tired that he could only lie still and let the waves carry him. If you remember this, you will also surely remember that on the next day Pinocchio, almost lifeless, was thrown on an island. There he found himself on a small stretch of ground. All around him was the great ocean. Where could he get news of his dear old father? As he looked about him, he saw a large, dark object in the water. It was a dolphin. It had stuck its nose out of the water and seemed to be waiting for the marionette. Of Pinocchio's father, the dolphin knew nothing. "But," said he, "I am very much afraid the boat has been lost in the night. My dear children." If you have a good memory, you cannot forget that after saying this, the dolphin turned and disappeared. This is not true. Indeed not. On the contrary, Pinocchio and the dolphin had a long talk, one with the other. At the end of it, they decided to take a long journey together. Chapter 2. While the two were talking, Pinocchio kept thinking and thinking of his dear father. He looked so sad that the dolphin finally said to him, "If you grieve so much for the loss of your father, you must be a good son. We dolphins are very fond of good children, and I more than others. To prove this to you, I shall only say that the dolphin of which Pliny speaks was my great-grandfather." "Pliny?" said Pinocchio, and he wrinkled his nose, because the name was not very well known to him. "Yes, Pliny the Elder, the famous author of a natural history. He was a Roman who was born about 1,900 years ago. He was killed in a terrific eruption of Vesuvius, the one that destroyed Herculaneum and Pompeii. Vesuvius, Herculaneum, and Pompeii were as familiar to the marionette as was Pliny. To speak plainly, he knew nothing whatever about them, but, making believe he understood everything, he said, "Yes, yes, these things I know." But of what does Pliny speak? He tells us that in the suburbs of Naples a dolphin became very fond of a boy. Every morning he would wait near shore for the boy. When the child came, the dolphin would make the youngster climb on his back. Then the dolphin would swim to Pozzuoli, where was the boy's school. Here the boy would go ashore, attend to his school duties, and when they were over, return to Naples on the dolphin's back. A few years later, the boy died suddenly. The dolphin, after waiting in vain for him for many days, grieved himself to death. "Is this little story really true?" asked Pinocchio. "Pliny tells it. Some believe, some do not. But this matters little. To me, then, as to my parents and their parents, good children have always been pets. Now listen carefully. Among dolphins, it is the custom for the young ones to travel with the older ones. I am a tutor, and I am about to start on a long journey with a young dolphin. If you wish to come with us to look for your father, you are more than welcome." "My dear Mr. Dolphin, I shall be delighted. May I ask where we are to go?" "We are to go on a journey around our world." "Around the world," exclaimed the marionette. "It must be amusing to see two dolphins walking arm in arm around the streets."
"Yes," continued the dolphin, "this young pupil of mine, who belongs to the Marsoon family, wishes to educate himself."
"And how can he better educate himself than by travel?" "To educate himself," exclaimed Pinocchio, opening wide his eyes. That word had always been hard for him to swallow. "Educate! Oh! Oh!" That word I never did like. "What are you saying?" asked the dolphin. "Oh, nothing, nothing. I was just thinking that my teeth are aching." "Then it might hurt you to go into the water and—" began the dolphin kindly. Pinocchio was perplexed. The idea of looking for his father he liked very much. Still, when he thought of that word educate, he shivered. He had always hated school as he hated fire, and you remember he once lost his feet through playing with fire. What a nuisance it will be, he kept mumbling, thinking of the sleepy time it would mean for him. Tell me, my dear sir, he then said, just to gain time, shall we travel by train? Of course not. How could we? I told you that we are to travel in our world. That means that we are not to move out of the water. So much the worse, again thought Master Pinocchio. Still, I don't see what kind of education there can be in seeing only sea and sky. Good Mr. Dolphin, do you think that if I go with you, I shall ever find my father? Perhaps. We may come upon him on some desert island. Who knows? In any case, it is your sacred duty to look for him. Will you come? Yes, answered Pinocchio firmly. I will go. Are you afraid? Afraid, laughed Pinocchio with scorn. Why, I don't know what fear is. Just listen. Once, while traveling, I came face to face with a lion. Instead of taking to my heels as many would have done, I took a large stone and threw it into his mouth. It lodged in his throat. The poor beast looked at me so sadly that instead of dispatching him, I took the stone out of his throat and he went quietly away. Oh, if that is the case, replied the dolphin, who could swallow the story almost as well as the lion had swallowed the stone. If that is the case, I beg your pardon. Very well. When shall we start? Tonight, just after sunset. How can we travel in the dark? Asked Pinocchio. He and darkness had never been great friends. Do not be afraid. We are to travel by the light of the sun. Of the sun? Why, we are to travel by night. Nevertheless, answered the dolphin, smiling, as dolphins are wont to smile, nevertheless we shall travel by the light not only of one sun, but of many suns. Pinocchio looked at him with his mouth wide open. The dolphin calmly went on, I promise to show you the sun in the sea. Pinocchio wrinkled his nose, as was his habit when puzzled. I wonder if the dolphin is making fun of me, he thought. Now I shall leave you, as I have many things to do before starting. Remember, this evening, said the dolphin as he went off. Do not be afraid, I will be here, was Pinocchio's reply. Very well. Goodbye, Pinocchio. Until tonight, Mr. Fish. The dolphin, who had gone a short distance, returned and said proudly, Just to enlighten you a little, I am not a fish. Again Pinocchio's eyes opened wide. What then? A horse? Pinocchio, I am surprised at you. No, neither horse nor fish. I never knew of there being anything but fish in the sea. Who told you so? There are many animals, my dear boy, who live in the sea, but who are not fish. What then? Birds, elephants, dogs? Yes, sir, just so. Still, you people who live on the earth and read books, you ought to know all these things. Well, yes, I do read books. In fact, I have read every book that has ever been written. All of them? Nothing less? Why, I didn't think a man could do that if he had 100 lives to live, murmured the good old dolphin. Well, Pinocchio, he went on, remember tonight, and do not forget that I am not a fish. With this remark, he disappeared in the blue waters. Pinocchio looked after him for a long time. The sun and the sea. Dolphins, not fish. I don't know why, but I'm very much afraid I'm being made fun of. Chapter 3. When he was alone, Pinocchio began to think of looking for something to eat. After trying here and there in vain, he had to be satisfied with looking at a few empty oyster shells. The best he could do was to make believe that he had already had a good meal out of them. This, of course, was not very easily done because the pangs of hunger kept making themselves felt more and more. At last, to forget them, he decided to make a tour of the island. This he did, and after that he took a nap. When he awoke, it was near sunset. He had all he could do to get to the meeting place in time. Off he hastened, and reached the spot just in time, for there was the dolphin, head out of water, looking for Pinocchio. A small dolphin, about a yard long, was in the wake of the larger dolphin. Pinocchio had made up his mind that even though he might be a dunce on the earth, still he knew more than a common dolphin. So he looked at the little fellow as much as to say, "Be very careful how you speak to me, young man. Remember, I am far above you." The old dolphin was very busy with the preparations for their journey. He came and went and gave orders to his servant. "You may laugh, children, but it is true." The dolphin had a servant who was also a dolphin, but of the family of the globiceps. These are so called because of their round heads, which look like the globes used in the electric lighting of streets. The young dolphin was playing in the water. He tried to attract Pinocchio's attention in many ways. He spouted water through the hole which every dolphin has at the top of his head. He called to the marionette. He smiled at the youngster. It was of no use. Pinocchio, with his wooden nose in the air and his dough cap on one ear, would not even turn his head. "I wonder if he is deaf or blind," the dolphin finally said, loudly enough to be heard. Pinocchio turned with a start. "For your own benefit, I just wish to say that I am not now and never have been deaf," he said as haughtily as he could. "Then why do you look at me in that fashion? And why don't you answer me?" was the reply. "I am acting just as a gentleman should toward those who are beneath him," said Pinocchio. "I don't know which of us is the better of the two. All I do know is that my father was the richest inhabitant of the sea and that the other dolphins considered him their king." "King?" mumbled Pinocchio, who knew himself to be the son of a poor carpenter, earning so little that he never had a penny in his pocket. "But king or not, what does it matter? In this world we are all equal, for we have all been created by God. Listen, my dear marionette, come here. As we are to travel such a long distance together, we should be friends. Are you willing to be my friend?" These pleasing words made Pinocchio see how stupid and how rude he had been. Think of it. A fish, oh no, I mean a sea animal, giving me lessons in politeness. Then turning to the dolphin, he said, "Yes, we shall be friends. What is your name?" "Marsavino." "And yours?" "Pinocchio." "A beautiful name. Come, shake hands." "Very willingly," replied Pinocchio. The good little animal stuck one of his forefins out of the water for Pinocchio to shake. "And what is the tutor's name?" said the boy of wood to the boy of the sea. "The tutor is a dolphin of the Tercio family, but I call him father. Is it true that you're coming with us on our travels?" "Yes," said the marionette proudly, "and I am able to teach you." "Teach me? That's strange. How do you expect to teach me?" "You will soon find out. You talk rather disrespectfully to me. I have been in all the schools of the kingdom. And you? You probably have never been on land for 24 hours. Marsavino looked at the marionette smilingly but made no reply. Pinocchio walked up and down with his hands in his pockets and his hat at an angle of 45 degrees, ruffling his feathers at the brilliant remark he had made. As soon as Tercio came near, Marsavino asked him if he were ready. "Yes, everything is finished," was the reply. "Are you ready, Pinocchio?" "Yes, I am ready. Let us start." "Start? How? Do you mean to say that you are coming under the sea with that suit?" "Of course, it's the only one I have." "A suit of paper! The very idea! Luckily I have prepared for this." "Here, Globicephalus," he said to his servant, "give me that little suit of ray leather, the one I had you make this morning." "Splendid!" cried Pinocchio, clapping his hands. "Now I have a new suit." Putting it on, he looked at himself in the water. Seeing how dark and unbecoming it appeared, he turned to Tercio and said excitedly, "I don't want this. It is too ugly. I like my pretty flowered paper one better. Your paper one, Globicephalus will carry in his satchel for you. Should you wear it in the water, it would be spoiled." "I want my pretty suit," insisted Pinocchio. If anyone saw me in this thing, he would ask me if I had been through the coal hole. But yours will be ruined if you wear it in the water, I tell you. I want mine."
"I want mine,"
wailed Pinocchio. "Very well. Globocephalus, take the paper suit out of the traveling bag and give it to the boy." The marionette turned, expecting to see an ordinary traveling bag. Instead, he saw Globocephalus take an enormous oyster out of the water.
"Isn't that strange?"
"Oyster shells for a traveling bag. Strange? Why, what is strange about that?" asked Tertio. "What is its name?" asked Pinocchio. "That is the giant tridacna. They are the largest oyster shells known." "How large the animal inside must be," observed Pinocchio with a yawn. "Yes, it is very large and also very beautiful. The center of the body is a violet color dotted with black. Around this is a green border. At the extreme edge, the colors change from deepest to lightest blue. Yes, indeed, it is very beautiful." "What a good meal it would make," thought Pinocchio. His only wish was for a good dinner, but in order to be polite, he said, "Who would ever think that there are such things under the sea? Why, you have been in every school in the kingdom and don't know that. Books on the subject you can find everywhere." Pinocchio bit his lips but did not say a word. Quickly he dressed himself again in his paper suit and declared himself ready to start. "All right." "Come along," said the dolphin, stretching a fin out to help Pinocchio along. The marionette started to walk into the water. He had not gone far, however, before his paper suit began to leave him. Hastening back to the shore, he very meekly put on the ray leather suit which Globocephalus handed to him. "Remember, my boy," said Tertio, "that in this world of ours we must think not only of the beauty, but also of the usefulness of things. Also, do not forget that a boy who never learns anything will never be anything."
"But I have learned much," answered Pinocchio.
"To prove this to you, I can now tell you of what material this suit is made. I have told you already it is of ray leather. Do you know what a ray is? Surely I know. You may give it another name. Still, it must be that white animal on 4 legs, you know, the one the shepherds sheared during some month or other." "Mercy!" cried Tertio. "You are talking about sheep. They give wool to man." Pinocchio, without moving an eyelid, went on, "Yes, that's true. I have made a mistake. I should have said it is that plant that bears round fruit, that when it opens—" "Worse and worse," interrupted the old dolphin. "What are you talking of anyway? That is the cotton plant." "Marsovino, please explain to this boy, who has read all the books in the world, what a ray is." So Marsovino went on. "A ray is a fish, in shape like a large fan. It has a very long tail, which it uses as a weapon." "To what class of fishes does it belong?" asked Pinocchio. "It belongs to the same class as the lampreys, which look like snakes, the torpedo." "Be careful never to touch that fellow," here interrupted Tertio. "The sawfish and the squaloids, that is, the common shark and the hammerhead." "The saw? The hammer," observed Pinocchio. "If I find them, I must keep them for my father. He is a carpenter, but so poor that he seldom has money with which to buy tools. Let us hope that you will never meet the saw, the terrible hammerhead, or even the common shark," said Tertio. Pinocchio made no answer, but in his heart he kept thinking, "I am very much afraid that the dolphins are teaching me, not I the dolphins." Tertio then handed Pinocchio a small shell of very strange shape. It looked like a helmet. "Wear this, Pinocchio," he said. "It will make a pretty cap for you. It is very pretty." "What is it?" "It is a very rare shell." "But it is only one shell." "Where is its mate?" "It has none. It is a univalve. That means it has only one shell. The telines have 2 shells, and are therefore called bivalve. Another kind looks like a box with a cover." "But does an animal live in there?" Of course, every shell has its mollusk. Mollusk, repeated Pinocchio. Yes, the small animals that live in shells are called by that name. They have a very soft body. By means of a member, called a foot, they get such a strong hold on rocks that it is very hard to tear them off. Some mollusks have a strong golden-colored thread by which they also hang to rocks. Why, people have even made cloth out of these threads. Pinocchio cared little for all this explanation. He looked at himself in the water and was, after all, very much pleased with himself. "This cap seems made for me," he said. "Too bad I have no feather for it." "Perhaps we shall find one on our journey," laughed Tercio. "Where will you get it? In the sea?" "Yes, in the sea," answered Tercio in a tone which made the impudent marionette almost believe him. Chapter 4. Well, children, let us hasten. If we talk so much, the sun will rise and find us here. Come, Pinocchio. Jump on my back and let us start. There was no need for Tercio to repeat his command. In the twinkling of an eye, Pinocchio was riding on the dolphin's back, holding on tightly to the dorsal fin. Gallop and gallop, my pretty horse, swiftly over the boundless sea. Straight through the water take thy course, till my dear father again I see. Gallop and gallop, my pretty horse, gallop away under the sea. Swim to the south and swim to the north, till my dear father again I see. So sang Pinocchio gleefully. Tercio and his swimming companions, with a few shakes of their strong tails, were soon far away from shore. This is not to be wondered at, for dolphins are known to be very swift. Very soon Pinocchio saw nothing but sea and sky. Always holding on tightly to Tercio's fin, he looked to the right and to the left, but nothing could he see of his dear father. "Hold fast, Pinocchio," suddenly cried Tercio. "All right, Mr. Tercio," replied Pinocchio, but he could say no more, for suddenly, with a great jump, the dolphin was under water. What a moment for our poor wooden hero! "Now I understand it all," he thought. "This dolphin wants to get me into the sea that he may eat me at his leisure. Oh, poor me! I shall never again see the light of day. But marvel of marvels!" He suddenly awoke to the fact that instead of drowning, he was breathing easily. Not only that, but he could actually talk. "This is strange," said he. "I have always thought that people would drown in the water." "And it is true," answered the dolphin, "that men usually drown in the sea. But I have given you the power to live under water. You see, then, you have become a real amphibian." "A real what?" "What am I now? An amphibian. That is, you have the power to live both in the air and in the water." "But are there such animals?" "Why, of course, child. Frogs, for example, which belong to the Batrachia family. In the water they breathe with branchia, or gills, and in the air with lungs. Usually, however, the name is given only to those mammals that live in the water and move only with great difficulty on the earth. To this class belong the seals and the sea lions. Well then, I shall never drown. No, and you will have a wonderful journey under the sea. Just hold on to me, and I will carry you. Do not be afraid." "Afraid? Of course not. But I don't like the darkness very much." "That is too bad. But the darkness will not last very long. You know I promised that we should make our journey by the light of the sun. Wait a while." Through the water Tercio went like an arrow, followed by Marsavino and the servant. Pinocchio, to gain courage, shut his eyes. When he opened them again, wonder of wonders! Very near to him a large sun was moving back and forth. It looked as if it were alive. "The sun at the bottom of the sea!" yelled Pinocchio, frightened almost to death. "Do you want me to believe that? You must be a wizard playing tricks on me." "I am not a wizard, Pinocchio, and the sun is not a trick. It is nothing more nor less than a fish. I never heard of such a thing." "And you have been in all the schools of the kingdom?" Marsovino, please explain to this boy what a sunfish is. The sunfish is so called because of the bright light that comes from its body. When several of these fish are together, the sea looks as if it were full of little shining suns. As usual, Pinocchio was silent. He was beginning to think that even dolphins knew more than he did. Stretching out his hand, he touched a small fish that was passing by. Another surprise! As soon as he touched it, it began to swell and swell until it was as round as a ball. And from this ball, countless points began to stick out. "Oh!" yelled Pinocchio again. "What is it this time? It is only a globefish, my marionette. It is harmless if you don't touch it. But why should it turn into a balloon?" "It does that to protect itself," answered Tercio. "It is possible for the globefish to do that because it can take in a large quantity of air. With bristles ready, it can then meet the attacks of other fish, as each point is as sharp as a needle."
"I never knew that before," exclaimed Pinocchio, forgetting his previous boast.
Tercio and Marsovino looked at each other and laughed. Chapter 5. The night passed without further adventure. As soon as morning dawned, the four friends rose to the surface. Our marionette was delighted to see the sun again. The pure morning air, though, reminded him that he was hungry. The day before, if you remember, he had eaten very little. "I should like something to eat," he said in a weak voice.
"Let us go to breakfast,"
answered the dolphin. Gaily he dove into the water and led the party deep into the sea. After a short swim, he stopped. But unfortunately, the four friends found themselves in a place where there were very few herring and salmon. These, you know, are the dolphin's favorite food. The salmon is a fish that lives both in rivers and in seas. Like the swallow, he looks for warm places in which to pass the winter. So, in large numbers, he migrates to the sea at that time of the year, and in the spring he returns to the rivers. "This morning our breakfast will be light," observed Tercio, swallowing 3 herring at once.
"I shall not eat anything. I don't feel very well."
"Besides, salmon is the only thing I can eat," said Marsovino. Tercio, wishing to please his pupil, started to swim toward 2 very high rocks. They were so high that their tops stuck out of the water. Very probably they were the base of an island in the middle of the sea. But although he looked here, there, and everywhere, he could find no salmon. Globicephalus satisfied his hunger with 3 dozen herring and half a bushel of smelts. And Pinocchio this time certainly did not suffer from lack of food. Tercio had shown him a large rock, attached to which were hundreds of oysters. Some were of the size of a pinhead. Others were as large as a boy's cap, and these were 2 years old. "Go and have your breakfast," said Tercio. "Must I eat those horrible-looking things?" asked Pinocchio. "Open them and see what is inside," was the reply. After Pinocchio had opened and eaten one, he no longer thought of the looks of the oyster shells. He opened and ate so many that it was a wonder to Marsovino that so small a person could hold so much. Suddenly Pinocchio noticed numberless tiny white specks coming out of some oysters. To him they looked like grains of sand. But when he saw the specks moving and trying hard to attach themselves to rocks, he could not help crying out, "Oh, look at the live sand, Tercio!" "Who told you it is live sand?" asked Tercio. "Those are the newborn oysters looking for a place on which to spend their lives. Where those small grains hang, there the oysters will live, grow, and die." "If no one gets them before that," added Globicephalus. "And are all those little dots oysters?" "Yes, all of them. And many of them come from a single oyster, for an oyster gives forth almost 2 millions of eggs at a time. These little things have so many enemies, however, that very seldom do more than 10 of the millions grow old." 2 millions! Then I may eat all I want to," continued Pinocchio, unmercifully tearing away the poor oysters, young and old. Look, Pinocchio, here called Tercio, pointing to a small fish colored with brilliant blues and reds. That is the stickleback. You may have heard that this fish makes a nest, as do birds. Also that the male, not the female, takes care of the eggs. Surely I have, answered Pinocchio seriously. The stickleback seemed to be very much excited. He moved around the nest he had made and watched it anxiously. The cause for this was soon evident. A second stickleback made its appearance from behind the rocks. At once the two engaged in a terrific struggle. They bit each other, used their tails as weapons, and charged each other viciously. During the battle they changed color to a beautiful blue mottled with silver. Pinocchio was struck with wonder. "Look, look, one is wounded, he falls, he dies," he cried, "and look at the other. How quickly he returns to the nest to guard the eggs." "But how is it," here asked Marcevino, "that once I saw a stickleback swallow one of his little ones? If you had followed him, you would later have seen the small fish come safely out of the large one's mouth," answered Tercio. "But why did the large one swallow the small one?" asked Pinocchio. "Because the little one probably wanted to run away from the nest. It was too soon, the little one was too young to take care of himself, so the father took the only means he had to save the youngster from an enemy," patiently explained Tercio. Just then a small fish attracted the dolphin's attention. "Boys," he said, "do you see that tiny fish? It is called the pilot fish. It is the shark's most faithful friend. Wherever goes the shark, there goes the pilot fish. Now, Pinocchio," he continued after a pause, "I shall leave you with Globicephalus. Marcevino and I are going to pay a visit to the dolphin beluga, who is a great friend of mine. He usually lives in the polar seas, but on account of his health he has come to warmer waters. We shall return this evening, if all be well. Meet us near those two mountains which are so close together that they form a gorge. You may take a walk with Globicephalus, but be sure to be at that spot tonight." "I am ashamed to be seen with a servant," began Pinocchio. "You are a fine fellow," answered Tercio with sarcasm. "Do you know what you should do? Buy a cloak of ignorance and a throne of stupidity and proclaim yourself king of false pride of the old and the new world." With this remark, Tercio turned to his pupil, and the two swam away. Chapter 6. "Illustrious Mr. Pinocchio," began Globicephalus, "if you do not wish to stay with me, I can walk by myself. We can meet tonight." "No, Globicephalus, do not leave me," begged the brave son of Mr. Geppetto the carpenter. The idea of being alone with all those fish gave him the shivers. "But you may be ashamed," began Globicephalus. "Please forget that. Now listen to me. You are a servant, and you can't have studied much. Still, you may know this. Mr. Tercio does not want me to call him a fish. What is he, if not a fish? Do you think Mr. Tercio would dare tell a lie to such an important personage as you are?" said Globicephalus, who was having some fun all by himself. "Neither Mr. Tercio nor Master Marcevino should be called fish, nor I either for that matter. What are you then? Birds? You have about their shape, and you live in the water. I know that in the sea there are only fish. But you are mistaken. To many animals that live in the sea you cannot give the name fish," continued Globicephalus. "Fish have a flat body, wedge-shaped fore and aft, as the sailors say, so that they may move rapidly both forward and backward. They are each provided with fins and a tail. These fins and the tail enable the fish to swim about in the water. Some fish have only a few fins, others have more. Then the fish has no lungs. It breathes in the water by means of gills. These are the chief characteristics of fish, but in the sea are many animals which do not possess them." "Please explain yourself," said Pinocchio, who had understood little. "Very well. Listen. There are the cetaceans, to which belong the whales, the narwhals, and the dolphins, the amphibians, to which belong the frogs and the seals. The mollusks, which is what the little animals that live in shells are called. The crustaceans, which is the correct name for the lobsters, crayfishes, and crabs. And the zoophytes, among which are the corals, sponges, and the many varieties of polyps. All these, you must know, are not fish.
What hard names, said Pinocchio, to whose wooden head these big names meant but little. What are you, then?
My masters and I are all cetaceans. We cannot stay in the water all the time. We must often come to the surface because we need air. We have no scales like fishes, nor fur like seals, but we have a smooth, thick skin under which is a layer of fat. Thank you. But why, if you and your masters are all dolphins, are you so unlike? For the simple reason that there are different kinds of dolphins, just as on the earth there are different kinds of dogs. As you have noticed, we are of different shapes and sizes. We have different names, too. I am a globiceps, my master is a tertian, and the young master is a marsuin. Who would ever think the sea is full of so many wonderful things? Still you have not seen anything of what there is to see. On all sides there are new things. Look at this, continued Globicephalus, picking up a shell and showing it to Pinocchio. Well, what is it? A lobster with a flower riding on its back. Almost that. It is a small crustacean called the hermit crab. Hermit? Yes. It is called that because it shuts itself up in a shell as a hermit does in his cell. This crab's cell is the empty shell of a mollusk. And do you know why it shuts itself up? No. Please tell me. Because the back part of its body has no hard covering, so the crab, to protect itself, uses the shell as a house and thus goes about safely. He must be a clever little fellow to think of that. But this flower on the top, is that a part of the crab's body? That is not a flower, it is an animal. An animal. But don't you see that it has leaves all around? Yes, and in fact it has the name of a flower. It is called a sea anemone. But if you look closely, you will see the little leaves, as you called them, moving busily. It is really true. They are tiny arms which the anemone uses to get its food. Throw a piece of meat near them, and you will see them gather themselves together. In a second, the meat will disappear into the body of the animal.
It seems hardly possible,
said Pinocchio again and again, as he watched the anemone closely. This anemone, continued Globicephalus, is a great friend of the hermit crab. Whenever you find one of these crabs, you will find an anemone on its back. When the crab grows and has to move to a larger shell, do you think, my illustrious Mr. Pinocchio, that he abandons his tenant? Never. The anemone has no legs, so the crab takes her very carefully in his claws and carries her to his new home.
It sounds like a fairy story,
Pinocchio exclaimed, wonderstruck. Still, these things are real, Your Honor, and are seen here every day. Pinocchio, who had liked the idea of being called illustrious, was delighted to hear himself addressed as Your Honor. So this servant thinks me a great man, he thought proudly to himself. He strutted round as if the whole world belonged to him. While he was walking with his head in the air and his hands in his pockets, he struck a round, flat object with his foot. Picking it up, he looked it over carefully. "Does Your Honor know what that is?" the cetacean asked him mockingly. "Of course. It is the bellows my cook lost a few weeks ago, and this," he continued, picking up another object, "is the crumb brush our maid lost last Sunday and looked all over the house for. I wonder how they came to be here." Globicephalus turned a somersault, the better to hide his laughing face. Pinocchio, thinking that the dolphin believed all his tales, continued his proud walk. Lying on top of a rock not far off was a transparent object of beautiful colors. It was closely woven like a network and looked like a fan. Pinocchio, having started on the road of storytelling, did not feel like turning back. "Just see how careless that maid was," he began again. Last summer I gave her this beautiful lace fan, and now see where I find it. Good care she takes of my gifts." Globicephalus continued his somersaults. "Look again. These are surely the plants that were stolen from my conservatories last winter." Globicephalus had had too much. He interrupted Pinocchio with, "And this, if it weren't so small, might be used to whip boys who sell tinsel for gold." Globicephalus was holding up a small object which really looked like a whip. "What do you mean?" haughtily asked Pinocchio. "Do you dare to doubt my word?" "I don't doubt it." "I know there is not a word of truth in anything you have said." "How do you know?" "Isn't it possible for me to have a palace and servants? You might have, but you haven't. Who told you so? I know it without being told." "How?" "Listen. Do you want to know what these two things are? The bellows and the brush? The bellows is a horseshoe crab. If you turn it over, you will see it has 10 legs like a lobster. The brush is a sea fan. The little plants which were stolen from your conservatories are simply coral polyps. All except the crab are zoophytes. Now do you see, my great Mr. Pinocchio, why I cannot very well believe all your tales?" Pinocchio was simply breathless. "Zoophyte! Zoophyte!" he exclaimed. "What does that big word mean?" "Oh," replied Globicephalus with a learned air, "that word means an animal that looks like a plant. By the way, I remember you asked Mr. Tercio for a feather to put in your cap. Here it is." And Globicephalus gave the marionette a long, delicate, feathery object of a bright yellow color. "And what is this? Another beautiful zoophyte. And to finish the trimming of your cap, you might use this 5-pointed starfish." "What? Is this a fish also?" "Surely you are mistaken." "Oh, no, Mr. Pinocchio. I am perfectly sure that I am not mistaken. The starfish is just as much an animal as the coral is. It was a long time before people learned that coral is made by tiny living animals. But now everybody knows that there are hundreds of the little coral animals living and working together on the same branch. These little animals grow and multiply very quickly. In a short time they even make mountains under the sea. You know how to tell fanciful tales better than I, Globicephalus. But my tales happen to be true ones, though they do seem fanciful. That mountain you see there is made by coral polyps. If you should climb to the top of it, you would find yourself on an island." "Very well." "I'll try it. I might find my father." "Yes, or you might meet someone and ask whether he has been seen. Ask, do people live on islands in the middle of the sea?" "What are you talking about? Let me explain. After the islands are made, little by little they are covered with earth. Then plants begin to appear from seed blown by the wind or dropped by the birds. Then man may come. Why not, my boy? I have enough to think over just now. Goodbye for a time. Goodbye. I will stay here. Do not lose your way." Without answering, Pinocchio began to climb. He was as agile as a monkey and was soon far up. "I do hope I shall not lose my way," he thought. "What a joke it would be to be lost at the bottom of the sea." Chapter 7. Pinocchio climbed and climbed. The poor boy was getting very tired. Still, he wanted to be sure the dolphin was right. So he went on bravely. At last the water began to grow lighter, and even his wooden head could understand that he must be near the surface. "It must be the light of the sun which I see," he thought. "On, my brave Pinocchio, and the top will soon be reached. Hurrah! Here I am!" With a bound he was, yes, the dolphin was right, on the shore of a real island. Shaking the water out of his clothes, he looked around. Those little beings, the corals, had certainly worked wonders. The island was rather bare of trees and grass, but there was a cave near the shore which soon attracted Pinocchio's attention. He went into it. It was not very large, but one could easily see that a man had been there. People must certainly be living here, From now on, I shall have to believe Globocephalus, thought the marionette. When he came out, he walked around and started to explore the island. He came to a small pond. In it lived not only frogs, but also thousands of other tiny animals. Pinocchio stopped to look at the water. It looked as green as grass. He certainly would have had another shock if someone had told him that the tiny animals that lived in it made it green. Yet that was really the case. These animals are not visible to the naked eye. Still, they are present in such great numbers that water sometimes looks green, sometimes red, and at other times even black, on account of them and their color. This was not what interested Pinocchio most, however. He saw other animals swimming around very quickly. Some were very tiny, very long, and had no legs. Others, a little larger, had 2 legs. Others had 4 legs, and still larger ones had a short bit of a tail. Perhaps you have guessed, children, what Pinocchio was looking at. The small black animals were tadpoles. When he was tired of looking at the pond, Pinocchio turned toward the sea. He thought he might see his father, but he was disappointed. Suddenly he gave a great shout of surprise. And no wonder. As if by magic, a fleet of tiny boats had appeared on the surface of the water. They were no larger than an eggshell. Nor was this all. From each little skiff rose 2 little rose-colored sails, and each tiny boat put out 3 pairs of oars as long as knitting needles.
I wonder where the little boats came from, cried Pinocchio.
Surely this must be fairyland. No, my boy, you are not in fairyland, he heard a voice behind him saying. Those are simply shells. Turning quickly, Pinocchio saw a little fat man standing before him, looking him over.
Shells,
repeated the marionette, too surprised to think of anything else to say. Yes, shells. And are they also animals? Pinocchio had asked this question so many times that it came from him unconsciously. Yes, they are. They are small mollusks of strange form. When they come to the surface of the sea, they turn the opening of their shells upwards. Then they raise their sails, put out their oars, and float away. They are called argonauts. Aren't they pretty? How beautiful they are! But see, they are disappearing. Yes, because clouds are gathering. It looks as if a storm were coming up, and these little animals don't like storms. So they are taking refuge under the water. By the way, began Pinocchio, would you please tell me whether or not you have met a little old man looking for his son? No, I have not. Well then, goodbye. It is getting late, and I must meet some friends of mine. But the little man did not wish him to go, so he held him by the arm. Listen here, my little man, where did you come from? From the sea, really? Yes, I'm taking a trip under the sea with 3 dolphin friends of mine. Under the sea? How can you live there? One of the dolphins made me an amphibian. You mean amphibian, my boy. What a wonderful experience you must be having. Yes, but please let me go now. I must meet my friends, or they will go without me. In a minute. But first tell me where you got that beautiful shell you have on your head. The dolphin Tercio gave it to me. He called it a long name and said it was very rare. I know it. Will you give it to me? No, I like it too much myself. You won't? Well, then I shall have to take it, and the man quickly put out a hand for it. But Pinocchio was quicker still. He gave a great jump, but, oh, poor fellow, he did not know how near the edge of the rock he was. Before he could realize it, he fell headfirst into the water. Chapter 8. Down, down, and Pinocchio sank straight to the bottom of the sea. And here we must remember that we are to think of Pinocchio as a real boy of flesh and blood. Only the shell was of wood. Otherwise he would have floated away on the surface of the water. When he finally touched sand, he felt half dead. It was not a very pleasant experience to fall through so much water. After a while, feeling better, he got up and looked around. He was in a strange place, a place he had never seen before. Of Globicephalus there was no sign. The poor boy was frightened almost to death. He thought a trick had been played upon him. But if he had had his wits about him, he would not have been so puzzled. Poor, thoughtless marionette. He did not remember how he had walked around in his explorations. He had fallen into the sea on the eastern side of the island, and Globicephalus was waiting for him on the southern side. But Pinocchio's wooden mind knew nothing of east or south. "Oh, poor me," he could not help crying. "And now what shall I do? I cannot climb this steep rock. If I remain here, I shall be eaten in no time by some of these fish I see swimming around." In fact, immense tunnies were passing near him. Enormous rays, looking like giant fans, dashed by. Over him glided horrible uranoscopes, or stargazers. These fish, like the halibut, have both eyes on the tops of their heads, and so can only see above them. Luckily, Pinocchio was under them, otherwise— "I'm afraid I am not very safe here," observed Pinocchio, whose knees were beginning to feel weak. "If these fish notice me, I shall disappear." "I do wish I could find dear old Globicephalus." Thoroughly frightened, he started to run madly along. Of course, he ran in the wrong direction. "I wonder what this is," he grumbled. He had stepped on something large and hard. He pushed the thick seaweeds aside. In their midst he found a large turtle. For a wonder, Pinocchio knew what it was. "How fortunate you are," sighed the marionette. "At least you have a house. In that armor of yours you are safe from anybody." But such did not seem to be the case. The harmless reptile was lying quietly in the weeds, trying to sleep. But even though Pinocchio was in such a plight as to be lost in the sea, still the love of mischief had not left him. Taking the poor animal by its hind legs, he turned it over on its back. The poor thing struggled and tried to right itself, but all in vain. When a turtle is on its back, it has to stay there. This is so well known that when fishermen catch them, they turn them over, sure of finding them in the same position even a day later. Seeing another shell nearby, Pinocchio was about to treat it in the same manner, but as it felt very light, he examined it closely. It was empty. The animal had probably been dead a long time, and the shell alone was left. It was almost a yard long. As he was looking at it, he chanced to turn his head upward. Horrors! What did he see? An enormous animal was about to throw itself upon him. No one had ever told Pinocchio what this fish was. Still, even he could easily guess its name. Its strange shape is so much like that of a large hammer that it is unmistakable. It was the terrible hammer that Tercio had spoken about. "I am lost," breathed Pinocchio, closing his eyes and throwing himself flat amongst the seaweed. Who could have blamed the poor boy for being frightened? He had seen that large gray mass coming nearer and nearer with wide-open mouth. He had seen the large black and gold eyes at the ends of the head, gleaming brightly with thinking of the coming feast. Poor fellow! But just as he was imagining himself in the shark's mouth, Pinocchio realized that the minutes were passing and that he was still alive. He may have changed his mind about committing a marionetticide, he reflected with eyes still closed. Time passed, and thinking that the shark had not courage enough to attack him, Pinocchio had the courage to open his eyes. He could hardly believe what he saw. The shark was moving away. Still, he could see that the fish was going because he had to, not because he wanted to. Looking more carefully then, he saw a strange sight. 3 small fish were sticking to the sides of the hammerhead and were pulling him away. Our hero had never seen such strange-looking animals as those 3 fishes. They were small and narrow, and on their heads each had a large, flat object which looked just like a dish. If the dolphins had been there, they would have told Pinocchio that these dark-colored fish are called remora. With the flat disc, they can attach themselves to other fish. Sometimes they let themselves be carried. At other times, when they feel in the mood for mischief, they pull others along wherever they wish. This is what happened to the shark. "Those fish certainly saved my life," thought Pinocchio. but I hope the shark won't do to them what he wanted to do to me. Feeling in need of a place of safety, he tried to hide himself in a large hole in a rock. But he had hardly put one foot in when he felt his shoe being pulled off by a large claw. Two eyes at the ends of two long sticks glared ferociously at him. It was a large lobster. Pinocchio had disturbed Mr. Lobster while he was looking for dinner, and so had been punished. Happily for Pinocchio, the lobster was satisfied with the shoe. If the claw had taken hold of the foot also, it might even have gone through the wood, and then poor Pinocchio. In disturbing the lobster, our hero must certainly have offended its whole family. Before he could realize it, the sand before him was full of horrible crustaceans. Frightened out of his wits, he could just look and wonder when they would stop coming. From every hole in the rock they came, little ones, big ones, flat ones, round ones. And ready to fight they certainly were. With claws in the air and eyes roving madly they approached. Very carefully they looked the boy over. A lobster or a crab never begins to fight unless he knows what he has to deal with. And still they kept coming. Wherever Pinocchio turned, there was a horrible creature. To the right, the large mouth of a common lobster threatened him. To the left, an ugly, spiny lobster shook his claws at him. Behind and before him, the sand was covered with them, large green crabs, common crabs, porcelain crabs, common lobsters, spider crabs, glass crabs, tiny fiddlers, and others. As if these were not enough, out of a hole came a crab larger than any of the others. He was rapidly coming nearer, but before long one of his claws was grasped by one lobster, the other by another. Without the least movement to fight, the crab just pulled off his claws and quickly went back to his hole. Pinocchio was thunderstruck. How could the crab do this so calmly? For the simple reason that the crab preferred losing his claws to being killed and eaten up. In a few months he would grow another set of claws as good as those he had lost. Yes, a crab can do that, children. Think of it. Oh, dear me, thought Pinocchio, who was getting rather nervous by this time. What is going to become of me? If only I had a shell as has a turtle I could hide away and be safe. Oh, what a splendid idea, he suddenly burst out. Why didn't I think of it before? I shall have a shell to hide in. And without another word he slipped into the shell he had been looking at. In a moment nothing could be seen of him, not even his nose. The crustaceans did not understand with what kind of a being they had to deal. So after examining the shell all over, they slowly disappeared into their holes. With a great sigh of relief, Pinocchio dared to stick his head out of the shell. Seeing his shoe lying on the ground, he quickly put his foot in it. It was not very pleasant to walk on the sand without a shoe. If I do not hurry and find Globicephalus, this house of safety may become a house of death, Pinocchio began to think after lying still a long time. Perhaps if I try, I may be able to walk around like a hermit crab. Let me see. Slowly the marionette stuck out first one leg, then another, then his arms came out, and lastly his head appeared. Holding the shell with both hands, he tried to walk around. Impossible. After a few steps he was exhausted. Too bad. It is so comfortable here. If only I had a horse. Would be like riding in a carriage. While he was thinking thus, he saw not far away 4 fish like the ones he had seen under the hammerhead. An idea flashed through his head. Oh, if I only could! The horses, he whispered. Trying very hard, he succeeded in dragging himself near them. The fish were very busy. They were looking for small crabs to eat and paid no attention to him. Trembling in every limb, Pinocchio went on. As soon as he was near them, he bent over slowly. How kind the little fish were! As soon as they felt the shell on their heads, they stuck to it. Just what Pinocchio wanted. In a moment he felt himself rising in the air, or rather in the water. The remores were strong and pulled him along swiftly. Hurrah! "Here I am in a flying machine," screamed Pinocchio, clapping his hands. "I feel like a prince, and not even a king has a carriage like mine. Hurrah!" Chapter 9. Pinocchio forgot all his troubles, and was full of fun and mischief. Grasping a long, thin seaweed and using it as a whip, he went gaily along. "Up, up, my little horses! Trot, trot, gallop, gallop!" he sang at the top of his voice. The fishes obeyed him well, and in a short time they had gone a long way. Pinocchio soon became so bold that he whipped a dory which was passing by, pulled a horrible bullhead by the tail, and slapped a red mullet that was studying him with interest. Meanwhile the horses ran and ran wherever they wished. Soon Pinocchio saw that they were near the surface of the water. "When I reach the top, I shall be able to see where I am. I will then swim to the coral reef and find Globicephalus," he thought. But on the surface of the water such a surprise was awaiting him that he forgot all about coral reefs or dolphins. All around him mushrooms were hanging. They were of all shapes and sizes, and of 100 beautiful colors. Some had round heads which looked like soap bubbles. Some looked like inverted glass bells, others like brightly colored umbrellas. Still others seemed to be made of emeralds and sapphires. From all of them, long, beautiful silvery threads hung down into the water. The waves moved them about, and the sun playing with them made them look like so many rainbows. Pinocchio was amazed at so much beauty. As far as eye could reach, he could see only these beautiful objects. It was a sight to arouse wonder in anyone. "I wish someone were here to tell me what those wonderful things are," he thought. What so attracted Pinocchio were Medusa. They also are animals belonging to the zoophytes. These Medusa have no solid parts and cannot live out of the water. If taken out and left in the sun, they dry up and soon nothing is left of them. Some of them are as small as a penny, and others are very large. "If I could only take one," sighed Pinocchio, hanging way out of his shell in his efforts to touch them. His 4 horses, as if to satisfy him, came near to the Medusa in order to eat a few. The marionette tried to imitate them, but he had no sooner touched them than he let go very quickly. "Oh, oh," he cried, shaking his hands. "They prick like so many nettles." He did not know it, but he had used the right words. In fact, fishermen often call Medusa sea nettles. "My dear mushroom rainbows," he said, bowing low, "you may be very beautiful, but you are not for me. Goodbye." Just then the fishes reached the surface of the water. But they did not stay there long. A fearful storm was rising. Great black clouds hung low, almost touching the water. The waves were white and ragged and lashed angrily. The Medusa had disappeared. Very gladly Pinocchio cuddled in his shell, and very happy he was when he found himself again at the bottom of the sea. There all was calm. For, strange to say, even though the most terrible tempest may rage on the sea, deep down in it the water is always calm. "How lucky it is that I did not start to swim," thought Pinocchio. "I should have been killed surely." On and on the fishes went, but finally they became tired and stopped near a rock. Here were some of the most beautiful shells imaginable. After resting a while, the fish continued their journey. Pinocchio went along happily. For a time he seemed to have forgotten what danger he was in. He let himself be carried along without a thought of the future. The party was now passing through the midst of a great number of eels. Who does not know an eel? Even Pinocchio knew them. He might, however, have very easily mistaken a common eel for a conger eel, or for a burbot, sometimes called ling. It was this ignorance of his which led him into trouble. To him the eels were all alike, so he pulled the tail of one, pinched another's round body, or shook a third one by the nose. The poor things turned and struggled. But this only afforded greater fun for Pinocchio. But, oh! He had no sooner touched a large red eel's tail than he gave a scream of pain. His shouts of laughter were changed to moans, and in his struggles the marionette fell out of the shell and tumbled on the sand. "Help! Help! I am dying!" "Someone has killed me!" howled Pinocchio, so loudly that he could have been heard a mile away. "Who is howling so? What is happening down there?" a deep voice called. Pinocchio heard nothing. He could only think of his pain and scream. He made such a noise that even the deaf could hear him. "Well, may I know what has happened?" called the same voice, nearer now. "Why, it is Mr. Pinocchio!" The words were uttered by a large dolphin with a head as round as an electric light globe. That dolphin was Globicephalus. "You mean I was Pinocchio. Now I am dead, so I am no longer Pinocchio. Why, what has happened to you?" All Pinocchio could do was to struggle on the sand. "Well, will you tell me what the matter is?"
"I can't. I don't know. I'm dead. Who has hurt you?" "Someone has killed me."
"Who? Fire ants. Oh, oh!" screamed Pinocchio. But by this time the marionette was beginning to feel better. He opened his eyes and looked at the dolphin. "Well, did you ever see a jumping jack come suddenly out of his box when the box is opened?" In just the same way did Pinocchio jump to his feet when he recognized Tertio's servant. His pain was forgotten. "Globicephalus! Oh, Globicephalus! How glad I am to see you!" he cried, and running up to the dolphin he hugged him wildly. Or at least he tried to do so, for his wooden arms did not go very far around the dolphin's neck. "What happiness it is to find you once more," Pinocchio kept saying. "I had almost lost hope of ever being with you again. But will you tell me what was the matter with you? Oh, have I not told you? I have been killed. But by whom, pray? By fire ants. Will you see if you can take them off? Oh, they are beginning again. There must be 1,000,000 of them. I don't see any on you. Then you must be blind. Hundreds of ants or mosquitoes must be on me. They have heated their stingers red hot, and now they are enjoying themselves by sticking them into me on all sides. Oh, oh!" Globicephalus turned the boy around. "I see nothing," he said finally, "but I feel everything. I am being bitten, cut, torn to pieces. That's queer. How did this pain begin? Why, I was playing with some eels, and just as I touched a red one's tail, why—" "Oh, now I understand," interrupted Globicephalus. "You touched an electric eel. Still, I don't see how an electric eel comes to be around here. Usually they are found only in rivers. It must have been a lost one. All you can do is just to bear it. In an hour or so it will stop. You have had an electric shock, that's all." "And that eel did it all?" "Yes, that eel did it all, and the torpedoes can do it too. But I only touched the eel with a stick. It doesn't matter. The shock is very strong, so strong that sometimes it may even kill a fish." "You are right. The shock is strong. Well, you will be all right. Now jump on my tail. We must return to the rock. Soon Mr. Tertio and Marsovino will be at the meeting place. But are we not far away from that meeting place? I looked all over for it this morning." "Oh no, we shall soon be there."